Shalom friends, Aaron here. Want to make a video talking about Teresa's video, birth story number 7. First of all, a warning, it's a story about baby being delivered. So, it's not exactly G-rated. I think Teresa does a really excellent job of, keeping it appropriate, but, maybe it's not for everybody. Guys, maybe you don't want to hear about some of this stuff, and maybe you don't want your little kids watching it. Just a fair warning. The other thing I wanted to say was, if you've not watched any of our other birth stories, Teresa tells the birth story. I got a little follow-up video with my thoughts about it. So that's what I'm going to do, just kind of work through some things that, as I watched her video, and I enjoy watching her videos, kind of take some notes. I'm watching a spider crawl across the floor. He would live if he was outside, but he's got to go. Is that all right, buddy? All right. 7 kids. We believed that we were going to be done at 7. And when we found out that Teresa was pregnant with number 7, we were surprised. How does that make sense? Well, it makes sense because she was thinking, and I was thinking, without either one of us knowing the other was thinking it, that we would, when we were done having our natural born sons and daughters, whenever God decided that we were going to be finished, we would adopt one. And why did we think we were done at 6? 3 boys, 3 girls. Well, when we decided that we were not going to use birth control, we're going to trust God to open and close the womb, that's something that we knew that God was speaking to her about and speaking to me about. I really believe that God had put it on my heart that we were going to have 7. And I just shared an update video recently, and in that I tell some stories about hearing from God in your heart, and then kind of your understanding being a little bit off, and then you having to try to reconcile that. Well, did you really hear from God or not? And this was one of those stories about, well, did I hear right with 7? And, spoiler, somebody came after number 7. And so for sure, by then we knew, well, 7 wasn't going to be the number. So God may have actually said that number to me. And Teresa and I both believed that 7 was going to be the number. Or he may have told me, you're going to have as many as you'll be ready for. I'll prepare you and you'll have as many as you can be ready for. But at that time, neither one of us, I know for a fact, I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea of having more than 7. That was as far as my heart and mind could take me. Why? Because it's so different. Like, I don't care as much, I think, as a lot of people about what others think of me. But come on, to be honest, we all care. And we don't want anybody to think we're crazy, let alone most people. And look, if you've got 4, that's a lot. 5, truly, people start looking at you like, gee, why do you have so many kids? 6 is kind of... But we had this 3 boys, 3 girls. Even the people who thought that was a little crazy, it was so neat and tidy. Having 7, that's like when most people think you've just totally moved into crazy town. And anything after that just confirms it for them. I mean, that's it. There's the people who are the sort of in between. There's still a bunch of people that appreciate the size of your family. It's bigger, but hey, it's not crazy. It's not 20 kids and counting kind of thing. And there's some people who think your family's too big, but there's not too many of them yet. And there's still some people in the middle, kind of crossing a boundary from 6 to 7. Like, the middle all kind of falls away. And, it seems to me that, most of the middle go toward thinking you're nuts instead of thinking it's pretty cool that you got a big family. So the other thing is, it's just something that our Western culture makes you feel afraid of, having a big family. So we just couldn't go any further in our understanding. Another little thing that really kind of, I felt like was evidence that we were going to be done, was that with a couple of pregnancies, I think specifically Isabel and Benjamin, our 2nd and 3rd, Teresa had a lot of weight gain, took her a while to lose it. But, I mean, truly, even though hormones are doing like crazy things to a woman's body when she's pregnant and not pregnant, having witnessed the number of pregnancies, frankly, a bunch, right? And several kind of on either side of this line of when we started making some pretty drastic changes in our diet and taking care of ourselves. We hadn't gone all the way, cutting out most of our added sugar and going gluten-free when Samuel was in Teresa's belly, but we had really begun to make some pretty significant changes just before that. And so after Esther was born, our sixth, our little miracle girl we talked about this last video, Teresa really got her figure back, and I had been telling her for years, because I believed it, that God was going to honor her commitment to his call on her life to be pregnant as many times as he thought she should be. He wanted her to be however many kids he was going to give her. She was submitted to that, to the will of God, and that he would bless her, and that these crazy fluctuations and changes in her body would settle down, and she'd get her figure back, and it wouldn't be a struggle. And I'll tell you, after Esther was born, she looked amazing. Now, she's looked amazing since, but since then we live in crazy town, so we don't eat bread pretty much ever. Nobody's eating candy, and we don't buy our bars ice cream and eat cookies and things like that. So we're pretty crazy. I'm sitting in my living room, and there's no TV in front of me, so we're nuts. But whatever. That made me think like we were done. And so, as crazy as it sounds today to think we were surprised when we found out she was pregnant with number 7, we were a little surprised by that, because we thought we were done. This is a good place to mention two things. First of all, although we had to kind of think about it a minute, like, guess we're not done, and consider what that meant. We can't hide anymore. If we're hiding at all with 6 kids, we're not hiding anymore. Everybody's going to have their eyes on us, and most of them aren't going to be thinking things that make us feel comfortable, probably. The other thing I want to say is, this is the same point. When we tell our kids about mom expecting, it's like the happiest holiday. You think about the things your kids get the most excited about. It's like that. It's literally like that, and for days or a week or longer. We just live in a party city, a party house over here. Every time we go anywhere in our big 15-passenger van, we ride in a party bus. I mean, they're just so excited about it. That's a fact. And it did not take Teresa and I long to end up with them, in their excitement. And so it's not like this idea of our feelings changing and it's this dramatic 180-degree kind of flip or anything like that, because we were always submitted to the will of God and committed to being obedient to him. And we've always been super excited about expecting, and we've always been just totally enamored with, adoring our brand new little one, and wondering the day they come, how did we do life without them? And so we want them all. They're so wonderful. And if I could put it in a nice tight little package for you, a nice little nutshell, I would tell you that it's like when God gave us the direction that we're going to let him choose, he knew our desires better than we did. And it's clear as day to me today that the family that we have, for me as a father, this is my desire. But my fear and my understanding and the lens that I saw things through all those years ago, when I believe God said 7, I couldn't see my own desire clearly. And I think Teresa would say something very similar. So what changed was I felt like we were holding our breath a little bit, waiting to see how many there was going to be, because it was scary and people were going to think we're nuts. And when we got to 7, man, we just take a deep breath and say, well, it doesn't matter now. And truly, it's like that. 7, 8, 9, it doesn't matter. Some little bit more crazy people think about you once you get into double digits, but even that's not really that big a change from going from 5 or 6 to 7 or 8. And really, people already look at you like you're crazy. So at 9, it doesn't matter if you got 10. Whatever comes after that's irrelevant. You're just nuts to them. So we just exhaled and said, okay, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. So that's that. I wanted to just comment quickly that, man, when Teresa gets her pregnancy leg cramps, they're intense. And I'm really sorry, honey, that I wasn't there that day to help you when your water broke. I was in the bathroom too long. I apologize. But, man, some of those times, that woman has woken up from a deep sleep in with a leg cramp, and she just, bam, just punched me. But I hear her. I'm tuned in. I know leg cramp noises. And I'm awake, and before I even wipe the sleep out of my eyes, I'm literally half asleep, and I'm massaging the leg cramps out. I'm listening to her tell that story, and I'm feeling bad that I wasn't there to help her. Sorry. Oh, man. Other than that, let's see. I just wanted to say also that she didn't mean it this way, but she said, you can't plan your deliveries. Well, you can, right? And people do, and they do it all the time. With elective C-sections, I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea. I've actually heard how people were going to schedule for a certain day, and the doctor's like, oh, I'm going to be on a golfing trip or something, so we got to do it sooner. Look, when a baby goes through the vaginal canal when they're being delivered, they're getting on them this bacteria that is like the jump start for their immune system. Like Teresa said, it gets in all their orifices on their face, their mouth, their nose, their eyes, their ears, take it into their system, and it gets their immune system going. They didn't need to do that while they were in the amniotic fluid in the womb, and now they need this protection of their immune system. And if you're electing to get a cesarean when you don't need to, I'm sorry, you're really robbing your son or daughter of the best start they can have health-wise. And it is a fact, not that it's the only reason or even the biggest reason. There are so many things going on in our world today that are a direct attack upon our health and well-being. But when you think about all the illness and trouble, allergies and asthma, and things that our sons and daughters dealing with, like right out of the gate, not having natural deliveries is a huge part of that. That's a fact. So I also wanted to comment about how they said we couldn't get retested for the bacteria. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's just stupidity. Of course, they could have retested. They want to give you the antibiotics. I mean, whatever, they just want to go ahead with it. They don't want to bother testing you again, and that's nonsense. When Teresa commented about what she was thinking about other than antibiotics, we talked about it a little bit because I was asking her about it when I watched her video. This wasn't it, but I thought maybe it was it. The liposome treatment. Basically, the liposomes attract the bacteria. It's like a bait they can't refuse, and then they die when they attack the liposomes. That wasn't it. Could have been maybe that like a hydrogen peroxide, a mild hydrogen peroxide wash, because that actually is very effective for bacterial infections in that area, or even fungal infections. But that takes some time, so I don't think that's what she was thinking. She couldn't figure out what it was at this point. But anyway, I wanted to comment about whether or not you think it's crazy about garlic. First of all, what Teresa talked about with the garlic clove, it's kind of a weird thing to hear. But garlic is incredibly antibacterial, super powerful medicine. That's a fact. I mean, gosh, if I would ever get an earache, which I don't almost ever, but when I was having more sinus issues, you could think it was like the beginning of an ear infection. I could put a little piece of garlic in there and a bit of cotton and sleep, and the next day it's gone, and I could have been suffering with it for days. When we used to get mouth sores all the time, which we don't now that we're gluten-free, it's another story, but kind of put it on there, a mouth sore, and it goes away. Very powerful, and there is absolutely nothing unsafe about using a garlic clove in the way that Teresa talked about, as long as you can remove it, and it's not nearly as weird as you might think. And I got to tell you that I looked for any negative side effects to using garlic in that way. any publications, articles, medical journals, anything that had something really useful to say about that, most of the information out there is that it's actually safe, that it is effective. Now, the only thing I could find in my searching so far was a ridiculous article from Shape magazine where an MD is telling you, don't use garlic, don't do it. And the article, it's such a clickbait article. I forget what year it was from, but the doctor's saying, don't do it. Like, it's like some really scary thing. Well, here's the reasons, 2 reasons why she said you shouldn't do it. Number one was that it was not effective. And her reasoning for that, first of all, was because it's known as being an antibacterial agent, garlic is. And if you've got a yeast infection, which is what she was talking about, don't use it. If you've got a yeast infection, well, that's fungal. And that's not what garlic is known for. But then a couple sentences later, she concedes that garlic also has shown antifungal properties. So go figure there. Her other reason for saying that it's not effective is because a whole garlic clove isn't doing any good, because you actually have to peel it and cut it up into pieces. And so if you're going to put a whole garlic clove there, it's not going to do you any good, because then the garlic's not really in contact with you, because it's not cut up. And then if you want to cut it up and wrap it in gauze, I've never read anywhere where anybody's talking about using garlic to fight any kind of infection in that area, cutting it up and sticking it in gauze, because then it's not in contact with your skin. But that's not what anybody says. And so it's one of these like straw man arguments. It's a fake argument. Nobody makes that argument. Nobody says you should do that. And then this cognitive dissonance, the article was very sarcastic and bringing up a point that's irrelevant. No, you cut slits in the garlic clove, and then it is effective. Her second point about why you shouldn't do it is you could actually have botulism bacteria clinging to the garlic clove, which is the stupidest thing I've ever read. We're talking about an incredibly powerful antibiotic, antibacterial agent. Because it was in the ground, and botulism lives in the ground, moldy ground, it could be clinging to the garlic. You don't cook with garlic, eat garlic, or use it medicinally without peeling off all of the layers that were in contact with the ground. So, I mean, I don't even know what kind of argument she's making there in that article. I'm no expert, but the chances that botulism is clinging to the garlic clove itself after you've peeled everything away, I'd say the chances are about 0 with that. So nothing weird about that at all. Absolutely a very effective thing for fighting bacteria in all sorts of ways is garlic. Teresa brought up something. I don't want to insult anybody here, especially if there could be somebody watching who might know something about this. Teresa worked in a pharmacy for a while. I really just think it's worth mentioning that there were times, maybe not every day, right? But when some pills that were going to be dispensed and given to a customer had maybe hit the floor and ended up in a bottle. So you're worried about bacteria from the ground being on the skin of the garlic that you're peeling off and throwing away, but maybe you need to be more worried about the pills you get in a little brown bottle, because I'll tell you what, the dirt where the garlic's growing is more likely than not a lot cleaner than the pharmacy floor. So there's that. Also wanted to talk about how ridiculous it is, this idea that Teresa was threatened that they were going to call CPS on us if she didn't take antibiotic treatments while she was delivering Sam. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know people who would say, well, we could have refused. Maybe. Or maybe we had that right. The problem is, when you exercise your rights, you lose a lot of times, and it's not worth the fight. There's a long video series I did about a really terrible experience we had in the hospital with our daughter Madeline, and my rights as a parent, my rights as a father, were more than just infringed upon. They were literally, I was put between a rock and a hard place to where they were taken from me because I didn't have a good choice. If I tried to stand up and take my rights, I was going to lose in that moment. I mean, even to the point where maybe I would have been kicked out of the hospital. And yeah, maybe I would have got my lawyer and won in the end and embarrassed everybody, and some people would have, lost their jobs. Heads would have rolled possibly. But in that moment when my daughter needed me, I wouldn't have been there. It was a lose-lose for me. So can you refuse? The thing is, there's so many stories out there now about people being medically kidnapped. I mean, first of all, adults, you're a danger to yourself or others. We're going to admit you into a mental facility and give you psychiatric drugs against your will. I mean, that's terrifying, and that happens. And as parents, you don't have the right to refuse treatment that a doctor says your child has to have. I mean, you just don't have that right. Now, I read a very interesting article recently. I'll try to find it maybe, but just saying that, as an adult, let's say I'm battling cancer, and I get to the point where I just can't handle the chemotherapy anymore, and I'm going to be done. Nobody's forcing me to do it, not yet. In fact, most people won't even bat an eye. Okay, you should, you're making a mistake, maybe the doctor's going to tell you, but they're going to let you make your choice. But if you're even a 16-year-old, you know exactly what's going on. You're the one going through the chemotherapy. You can't handle it anymore. You want to be done. You don't have that right. They make you do it. You have no choice, and your parents can't make that choice for you. You're going to do it against your will. There's nothing you can do about that. That's the scary place we live right now. As far as the nurse goes, this is one person I'm not concerned about offending. She was an awful person to deal with. That's a fact. I don't have any hate for her, but no good feelings about her being a nurse. I've met some really awesome nurses. I've met some bad ones. And one of the things, a lot of the bad nurses that I've met, because look, whatever you do, any human endeavor, there's going to be people who do it well and people who do it poorly, right? One thing that a lot of the bad nurses I've met have in common is when you do something that's against their routine, the way they do it, they don't like it. And they get real prideful about it. And they will give you all kinds of grief and problems. That was a huge part of her issue. She did not like us. Maybe she's not religious. Maybe she doesn't like big families. But I tell you what, she did not like that we had a birth plan that said all of these things that you normally do. We're not doing this or this or this or this or this. You're not giving the baby a bath right away. He's going to sit and nurse with his mom right away. We're not sending him down to the nursery. We're going to change his diapers. You don't need to do anything. We're going to handle it. She didn't like it. And she was not willing to let that go. Teresa commented that he was making like sort of a tiny little whistling sound. I mean, it was literally nothing. I mean, so close to literally nothing. But what she said it was grunting. That it was absolutely not. And she did, in fact, absolutely take him from his mother who was wanting to nurse him. The absolute best thing for him to do right in that moment, even if he was making little noises. Because they had checked his O2 sat levels over and over and over again. They weren't a little low, they were absolutely perfect. And no matter how they checked, it never came out as any other way than great. So his oxygen was not a problem at any point, never a concern, even a little bit. His grunting that she said he was making, which was imaginary. But when she took him and put him on the incubating table, she told me, and she hated that I stood over there with her. She said, for 2 minutes, I got to not hear him making any noises. And he would sit there making no noises. Lay there, not making any noises. Breathing's perfect. And then when he got close to 2 minutes, she'd disturb him. She's sitting there with her hand on his chest, and she'd rub him and move him, and he'd make a little noise. So anyway, I don't want to get into that. Teresa said enough about it, but that was garbage. Very irritating, without question. Quick thing, Teresa commented about how great kombucha is. Kombuchas are great, but if it's a store-bought kombucha, the problem is, now we make kombucha, and I say we, I help a little bit, but it's Benjamin, our second oldest son. He makes amazing kombucha. It's not very sweet, and not a lot of people, not everybody's going to like it. It's vinegary, and the reason for that is you ferment the tea, then you add your fruit juice or whatever you're going to put in there, and sugar, and then you ferment it again. And the good bacteria from the Scobie Hotel, they eat up the sugar. And the longer you ferment it, it doesn't really get very alcoholic. That's really kind of a misunderstanding. It's not even possible for it to get that alcoholic, but it gets more vinegary. And that's because the sugar's getting eaten up. That's when it's good for you, because the sugar's not good for you. Virus, bacteria, even fungus in a roundabout sort of way, all thrive in your system when you have too much sugar. That's a fact. The idea that we're told, well, drink orange juice when you have a cold, that's ridiculous. You need to be avoiding sugar. And that's like drinking a Coke. You're just feeding the thing that's making you sick. And so when you go buy a kombucha off the shelf in the store, read it. It'll tell you that, I mean, almost everyone I've seen, there's sugar added after the second ferment to taste. And they're really kind of negating the positive effects of drinking the kombucha. They're just turning it into a soft drink. So not all kombuchas are created equal. And if I could share Ben's kombuchas with you, I'd love to. But, you know, that's probably not going to happen unless you come visit us. I also just wanted to talk about trauma. There are lots of people who disagree, but there's lots of studies out there that have powerful evidence about how when we suffer emotional trauma, whether little people or old people, that it affects us physically. People get sick from having emotional trauma. Those are facts. People die from emotional trauma. And the idea that our little ones aren't suffering when they're having trauma, I mean, that's really foolish. So many things in history of the medical establishment have been like, well, we're sure this is good. We're sure this is right. 10 years later, 20 years later, wow, that was stupid that we ever thought that. It wasn't that long ago that it was believed that infants didn't feel pain like we feel pain. And they would have surgeries, procedures that caused them a great deal of pain without any kind of pain medications. Now that seems barbaric to us today, but you know, in the 70s, back to the 50s, it was a pretty normal thing to do. So, you know, it might seem like a small thing to you that we don't want to have these needle pricks in their heels and all these other things. We're trying to make that experience for them, which, think about it, I mean, they were in this watery home, safe from everything, stuck out in the world. It's traumatic enough, and it can be great for them. Their beginning can be great, and it's our job as parents to try to give them the best beginning, not traumatize them, not rob them of their good bacteria and their milk from their mom and all of this stuff. I mean, we've got a responsibility to make it as good for them as we can. And we've come a long way in that. It would be amazing if we could go back in time and take our oldest and handle pregnancy and delivery and early life the same way that we do now. Unfortunately, we can't do that. It's taken us years to get to where we are now. And as we work our way through to the end here of where we're at so far with our size of our family, we'll kind of fill you in on where we are. But we've learned a ton, and we're looking forward to, in the process of sharing these videos, sharing some of that information with you. So I talked about naming Samuel David, I believe, right? His name, Samuel, God has heard. David, my beloved. Absolutely believing that God was saying, hey, I heard that you wanted to be done at 6 kids, but here's my beloved. Kind of like a joke, but not really. And I just wanted to say that babies, man, when they're smiling, when they're laughing, when they're cooing, for me, when I'm holding one of our little ones and they're smiling at me, like whatever stresses and worries I have, they just melt away. There's something really powerful about that. And having our little ones has made life easier in more ways than it's made it harder. We laugh more, we smile more, we have a better quality of life. Real life, inside life, not outside, not the car you drive and the clothes you wear and the money in your bank, but what's going on inside is better. And it's a challenge for me recently to think about the beautiful, medicinal smiles of my young children and my older ones. That as a dad, I can do the same. I can give them a big bearded, grumpy dad face, or I could smile. It's powerful. It's powerful. So, hey, we want them all. We love them ever so much. And we look forward to telling you the next few stories. So until next time, shalom, friends. Thanks for watching.